Good evening. We share with you tonight our Defacto review program. This program is about three main events, or most important events we selected from all events happened in Mongolia for last week. Today on the program, the 8th Parliament Autumn Regular Session begins. Presidential election and stability of the government. FATF examiners visit Mongolia and financial Graylists. Teacher Day is celebrated. Teachers' salary and job requirements. Let's start first topic. Parliament had started autumn regular sessions. This 8th Parliament since 1990. And by the way, this year is the parliamentarian democracy year for Mongolia, 30th year's anniversary. October 1st, new parliament had started its regular sessions. Irregular sessions was held from August 17 due to coronavirus's impact on the economy and the social life in Mongolia. This time, this regular autumn sessions of the parliament will discuss some 112 laws, including, as usual, at this time they discussed the budget for next year, 2021. But there are some 40 laws that will be amended or changed just after following the amendments of the Constitution of Mongolia happened at the end of last year. Those are very important laws. And also there will be a reform of public services. In Mongolia we call public services state service. And also there will be laws of reforming of state-owned enterprises, long due laws, and Mongolian ordinary people are waiting for those laws. I would like to outline some points from the speaker, Zandang Shatar's speech at the opening sessions. He said about the basket of laws about judicial system will be adopted. The most important out of them was the temporary law adopted a year before to grant right to national security councils to change heads of state prosecutor office, anti-corruption agency, and Supreme Court head. And this law will be terminated. Also, there will be political parties law amended, and there will be new law on political parties financing. But I should note here that this kind of planning was every time for every sessions of the parliament, and they never discussed that political parties law or their parties either. As the speaker said that the mortgage rate in the country will be 6%, 2% less than currently, and the principal decisions in between important stakeholders are made. That's what his statement is. But in reality, it is not that easy to have even 8% mortgage interest rate. I would like to outline also the president's speech at this regular session's opening. He highlighted three things. One is a region's unequal development. He said, sharp contrast in development of the unitarian nation, sharp contrast in regional development of the unitarian nations shows the lack of united policy of development, which is true. Second, he was saying about ineffective use of budget money. Rural areas where there are still wooden latrines and no shower places, yet there are hospitals and schools buildings with a larger capacity than demands there, and no infrastructure. And the third point, he said, Mongolia needs no sustainable but boosting development, or he said jet development, The priority is revenue, and we need a large one, he said. Well, it is not that, it is much easier said than done. So these are three questions, in a way, I find more criticizing the current government's policy. So on the other side, one can say that the president is preparing for presidential election next year. He had been visiting all the regions and distributing first time himself medals, orders, Mother's medals, orders of distinguishments. And also he said that there are so far 320 billion tugriks, or 15 million US dollar money was taken out from the offshore accounts related to Mongolian officials. And also he was showing that he had been, as he promised it, his campaign at the beginning, that he started to hold responsible many corrupt officials. In fact, from June this year, suddenly many long due law processes happened, trials happened, and many high-ranking officials were now serving their prison term. But however, the president is not mentioning and not talking at all about the largest corruption in Mongolia, which is buying with the state money, public money, the shares that belong to Russian government, shares of the Erdenet Corporation, the first and largest copper producing factory owned by Mongolian and the Russian government. And about that corruption case involving head of the TDB chair, Ertin Bidek, our president is not talking at all. So now the question comes after all this, how stable will be the Mongolian government for the next 4 years? Why? Because in 8 months, we will have presidential elections in Mongolia. But this time, according to the new constitutions, Mongolian president will be elected just once, not like twice before, and for 6 years, not like 4 years before. So that provision in the constitutions, when they were amending, was going with the note that this provision will be valid from 2025 presidential election. But during the adoption of that amendments of the constitution, that note had disappeared. So which left in limbo whether this president can go for the next election or not. It depends on also amendments in the presidential election law, which is included into these 40 laws coming after the amendments. So we will see. And that decision may impact a lot on the next year election landscape of Mongolia. Additional to that, we have 4 political parties in the parliament, and each has a right to put their candidate for election. So at least 4 persons are expected, unless the current coalition of People's Party, Democratic Party and Mongolian Revolutionary Party coalition for the local election happening October 15th of almost next week. So it's not clear whether they will go together with one candidate or not. Anyway, that issue of whether this current president will come out of his own Democratic Party or not, it's still a question. However, we can say that Mongolian political parties started to be very active, preparing for that presidential elections. You know, in provision 30.1 of Mongolian, the new amended constitutions, it says that Mongolian president of Mongolia, is a head of state and the symbol of unity of Mongolian people. However, the president has been playing kind of oppositional role in the state politics in the country, because Mongolians were usually If they elect parliament with one-party majority, then they were electing a president from another party. So we have two strong powers, both elected from the people. First is a strong cabinet that is elected from, nominated from the parliament that got the people's votes. And we have the president also voted directly from the people. So these two, in fact, are strongest two political power in the country, and plus the president has a right to propose draft of laws, and also he has another strong right in Mongolia to nominate or to initiate the nomination of heads of justice system of the country. And eventually the president of Mongolia becoming a de facto leader of his political parties. That's the situation of political stability of the country, and that's my first topic. Our second topic is FATF examiners visited Mongolia. And what does those gray lists mean for the country? Mongolia was visited by the FATF Anti-Corruption Money Laundering Agency people last week. What happened was on May 11th, Mongolia had sent its reports to go out from the gray list of these organizations. And the headquarters of FATF in Paris regarded it as satisfactory. Then they have sent last week their delegations of few experts, and plus they had also a whole number of online conferences. It looks like Mongolia is out of the list. However, it will be approved by the decision-making body of that FATF in Paris on October 18th. At the same time, Mongolia was also recently released from the grey list of European Union. The finance ministers of this union have made that decisions on October 6th. What does those blacklist and grey list mean of these organizations? European Union blacklist, for example, says that this is an EU list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes. Mongolia was in that list from December 5, 2017 to January 23 of next year. What does exactly in reality mean, that list? That means Mongolian citizens, companies, were not able to pay with credit cards in European Union countries. And Mongolian businesses have no right to, no possibility to have any more or new financing from European Union. So we were there for a short time, but they have removed Mongolia at the end of January 2018 to a grey list. What is this grey list? That is tax transparency, information exchange, and the implementation of international rules to combat tax evasion. We are to be we are to do that all things, and looks like we have done it by the beginning of this month. Why Mongolia is listed in those lists? What actually happened was at the end of 2017, Mongolia was not able to pay its due foreign debts, and the government had asked again 6th or 7th times International Monetary Fund to help, and they have agreed to implement a program called extended facility, payment facility, and there was one condition, that Mongolia will improve its banking system quality. Prior to that, IMF had noticed that Mongolian banking system is running bad, and there is possibility of money laundering. And Mongolian banks are running with great risks, including they are giving credit over than it is on equity can allow. And then next year, 2018, following year in 2018, the IMF had given advice to increase equity capital of Mongolian commercial banks. And somehow the country was not enforcing that. They had several auditing, international independent auditing, which approved that several banks need to really increase their own equity capital with sound money. Turned out some were doing it with the cash. So because Mongolia could not increase the own equity capital of commercial banks, they could not enforce, Mongolia became into this gray list. So nowadays, government says that all thing is done, some 40 recommendations of FATF in terms of increasing quality of Mongolian banking and financial sectors. The government says it's implemented or it is done. But however, the public has not yet received normal, in Mongolian language, a report on what the government has done for that coming out of the gray list. However, there were certain help of those lists. For example, Mongolia had joined OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, forum called the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes. And it was ratified by the Parliament of Mongolia January 3rd this year, and it is valid or in force from June 1st of this year. So we are for the last 4 months under this convention. What does it give Mongolia? That means Mongolian tax authority or Mongolian government will be able to exchange information with the related authorities of another 130 countries in the world. There are 180 countries in the world, and many of them are offshore jurisdictions. Not sure if all these jurisdictions are inside of this 130 or not. Anyway, so they will have exchange of information, and also they keep confidentiality of privacy of taxpayers according to the international standard. Mongolian tax authority will have also a opportunity or possibility of exchanging or of requesting information from international banks, tax havens, and offshore zones related authorities, which is a substantial change. And also, Mongolian banking, financial, and taxation informations will be transparent, and it will be produced by international standard, and it will be it will be open to the public. Those are already good news if they are implemented. But however, I would like to add at the end of observation of this topic that Mongolian commercial banks they say, have increased their own equity, but we have not yet clear information or independent observations or state information about that. So it means that Mongolia may go out from the gray list of those organizations, but still it remains in the gray list of Mongolian public. Our third topic tonight is World Teachers Day is celebrated in Mongolia. And we'll talk about teachers' salary and job requirements. Well, October 5th, Mongolia has celebrated, as all the world did, the Teachers' Day. There were a lot of awards, medals, orders were given, and there were a few interesting conferences, one of which I had a chance to moderate. It was about the teachers and students' development. It was, I think, for me, a good sign for Minister of Education to have this kind of dialogue, open dialogue of teachers about the current face challenges, etc., along with other holidays and celebrations. You know, Mongolia was celebrating Teachers' Day, in fact, since 1967. Usually it's first week of February, but 6 years ago, from 2014, Mongolia celebrated that day on the day of World Teachers' Day, as you know, UNESCO had initiated this idea from 1994. Well, teachers are a very important army of Mongolian society. We have today some 50,000 teachers for 3.2 million people. And those teachers work in the tertiary education institutions. There are 7,300 of them there as of last year. But it was 5 years ago, 2,000 less. 200 less, sorry. And preschool teachers, preschool institutions, teachers like kindergarten, etc., we have 8,000 of them. And the largest group of the teachers are working in the secondary school. We call it general education schools. There are now 32,000 teachers of 50,000 work there, 49,000 actually. But out of this 32, 28,000 work for state-owned schools, and 3,300 teachers work for. So in this secondary school, we call it general education schools, there are 32,000 teachers working, out of which 28,000 work for state-owned schools and 3,300 work for private schools. We have these two systems of ownership of schools since early 2000 or just before that. Mongolia spends, last year, 2019, we spent 15.3% of GDP for education, which was 14% 5 years before. And that is 4.2% of GDP goes for education. This is not so bad. It's about or a little bit more than average worldwide, but still we must have a room to increase. Why? Because workloads of teachers depend on the children, this amount. Because more children, more workloads of a teacher. And that amount of school people depends on the concentration of the population, in particular where in such a large land, half of the people live in this Ulaanbaatar city, and more migrations have been happening for the last 20 years. It's very hard to find school seats in Ulaanbaatar and very hard to find peoples in countryside. So that's why in countryside the teachers work as much as they can, or as much as there is a possibility, because there are, for example, in Samsung Center, only 5 people in a classroom. Teachers are not enough, and a teacher teaches several disciplines in these areas. So we raise now here a question of teacher salary. And teacher salary in Mongolia is really much lower than values required from teachers by the society. Average salary in Mongolia in 2015 was 800,000 tugruk. 2019, 1.1 million tugriks. But the average salary in the education sector was now 900,000 tugriks. Teachers, this is a base salary, but teachers, base salary average, but teachers receive additional other compensations for years of experience, for over hours, and skills level compensation. Minister Hurlbatar said recently, Finance Minister said, that in 2021, teachers who worked more than 21 years, base salary plus the other compensations will total about 1.5 million tugriks. 20, that's about some $500 per month at the current exchange rate, which makes $6,000 per year. But however, for example, in some countries where a teacher worked for more than 15 years, average annual salary is in Germany 38,000 US dollar, in Canada 71,000, South Korea 57,000, Hungary 21,000, so Mongolia about 6,000 in 2020. So we need to increase the salary. However, the question is coming, will it also cause increase of education quality? As we had recently another experiment or cases where the judges' salary was substantially increased. The justice increased in Mongolia. So that's this question still the society is asking. But in terms of, for the teachers, it's a matter of increase in salary. But with that increase of salary, there should be job requirements level increased. Teacher certificate requirements should be higher and teachers are to be retrained constantly. In Canada, for example, even a professor of a high university cannot teach in the schools because it requires particular skills to work with the people in the schools. So as the salary increases of teachers, there will be more competition to come to work as teacher, and the prestige of teachers will be increased, and the schools will select the better ones or best ones, and that quality will be reflected in the quality of education of students. Finally, I would like to note that there is a huge difference in between two types of schools in Mongolia. For the last 20 years, we have divided the society substantially by education. Private schools have much higher quality and many per capita. Many students go abroad, but also many not coming back now either. So there is a current expenses payment for each student, for each pupil to all schools, including the private schools. Now there is a motion that why the private schools should receive this current expenses for each child at the time when they receive several thousand US dollars as a tuition fee. And instead those money from the budget could go to the schools in outskirts of Ulaanbaatar city or in the rural areas where in some cases some schools have 3 shifts of children. And yet, if the state is financing the schools, education, all the costs, then there should be a system of holding them responsibility for the state budget money spending in terms of quality, in terms of efficiency of those spending. This concludes my third topic and our weekly review, de facto review in English. Our program goes on MNB World every Sunday night at 7 o'clock, and also on Facebook page live. If you missed the program, you can also listen or watch the program from tomorrow on jargaldefacto.com website. And our program was also live on Facebook. And thank you very much for being with us tonight, and see you later or see you next week at this time on this channel, MNB World. Thank you.